Starmer was asked a question about our policy on indefinite leave to remain. This is what he said.
Well, I do think that it is a racist policy. I do think it's immoral. It needs to be called out for what it is.
Farage versus Starmer racism row. Keir Starmer just called Nigel Farage spineless over racism allegations, and Farage responded by branding Starmer the weakest prime minister in living memory, which is quite the escalation from what started as questions about Farage's school days and Reform MP Sarah Pochin's comments about ethnic minorities in TV adverts. We've gone from allegations about teenage behavior to a full-blown war of words where both men are essentially calling each other morally bankrupt failures. And honestly, neither is coming out of this looking particularly good. This is political politics at its most personal and most toxic. So buckle up, because we're about to dissect how a Guardian report about Farage's time at Dulwich College has exploded into a racism row that's consumed PMQs and international summits. Why Starmer thinks attacking Farage's character is good politics while traveling to the G20 summit, and whether either man's accusations against the other actually land or just make them both look petty. This is political combat where neither side is interested in the high road, and the collateral damage is any pretense of civilized political discourse. Right, let's start with what actually triggered this latest explosion, because the sequence of events matters. The Guardian published allegations about Farage's behavior during his school days at Dulwich College, claiming racist conduct when he was a teenager. Farage has denied these allegations and threatened legal action, which is his standard response to claims he disputes. Whether the allegations are true, partially true, or completely false is something that would need to be determined through legal proceedings if Farage follows through with this threat. But before that could be resolved, Starmer decided to make it a political issue by raising it during Prime Minister's questions. He essentially challenged Farage to explain the allegations, not as a private citizen responding to media reports, but as a political leader being held accountable by the Prime Minister in Parliament. That transformed the story from newspaper makes claims about politicians' past into Prime Minister demands politician address allegations in Parliament. Then Starmer connected those school day allegations to Reform MP Sarah Pochin's comments about ethnic minorities in TV adverts. Pochin had apparently made remarks that many people, including Starmer, consider racist about the representation of ethnic minorities in advertising. Starmer's argument is that Farage has done absolutely nothing about Pochin's comments, which demonstrates a pattern of failing to address racism within his party. Speaking as he was traveling to the G20 summit in South Africa, which is interesting timing for delivering a character assassination, Starmer went full attack mode. He said Farage doesn't have a good track record on addressing racism, called him spineless, and said if someone in labor had made similar comments, he'd have dealt with it straight away. That's strong language that's designed to paint Farage as weak, hypocritical, and tolerant of racism within his party. The specific quote is worth examining. "The man is spineless. If that had been someone in my party, I'd have dealt with it straight away." That's not diplomatic criticism. That's personal attack designed to question Farage's character and leadership. Starmer's essentially saying Farage lacks the courage or moral clarity to address obvious racism, which is about as damning an accusation as you can level at a political leader. Starmer continued, "He needs to explain the latest allegations, and while he's at it, he needs to explain why he's too spineless to take action in relation to what is obvious racism in the comments of his fellow MP. So far, he said absolutely nothing about it. He's got plenty to say about plenty on things, apart from showing some leadership when it comes to racism." That last bit is particularly cutting because it suggests Farage is a showman who will opine on any topic except addressing racism, because that would require difficult decisions and potentially alienating parts of his base. Now, Farage's response, branding Starmer the weakest prime minister in living memory, is a counterattack that completely sidesteps the actual allegations to attack Starmer's performance in office. It's classic whataboutism. Instead of addressing the substance of Starmer's criticism, shift the conversation to Starmer's failures as prime minister. Whether it's effective depends on whether voters care more about allegations of past racism or current government performance. The problem with Starmer's attack is that it's based partly on allegations Farage denies and partly on his handling of Sarah Pochin. The school day allegations are just that, allegations, and Farage has threatened legal action, suggesting he believes he can prove them false. Basing political attacks on unproven allegations is risky because if they turn out to be false or unprovable, you look like you were making baseless smears. The Sarah Pochin situation is more clear-cut because her comments are public and documented. Whether they're racist is a judgment call, but they certainly made many people uncomfortable and sparked controversy. Starmer's criticism that Farage has done absolutely nothing about them is fair if you believe party leaders should discipline MPs for controversial statements. But it's also true that political parties regularly protect their MPs from discipline when it's politically convenient, so Starmer's claim that he'd have dealt with it straight away deserves discussion. The timing of Starmer making these comments while traveling to the G20 summit is interesting because it suggests this isn't just spontaneous reaction, it's strategic communication. He could have waited until he returned to Britain to address the Farage situation, but he chose to do it while on an international trip, which means he or his team calculated that the attack would play well domestically, even while he's abroad representing Britain internationally. The risk of this strategy is that it makes Starmer look obsessed with Farage, rather than focused on governing. When you're the prime minister calling out the leader of the fourth largest party from an international summit, you're elevating that person to your level and suggesting they're important enough to warrant your attention, even while you're supposed to be conducting diplomacy. That's not necessarily good politics. Farage's counter that Starmer is the weakest prime minister in living memory taps into genuine public dissatisfaction with Starmer's performance. The polling backs up the claim that Starmer is historically unpopular, so the attack has factual grounding, even if it's deflection from the racism allegations. It's saying, you want to question my character, let's talk about your catastrophic failure at actually governing. The broader question is what either man gains from this exchange. Starmer presumably hopes to damage Farage's reputation and make reform less appealing to voters who are uncomfortable with racism, but he risks looking like he's punching down at Farage while his own government is failing. And he's using unproven allegations to do it, which could backfire if those allegations don't hold up. Farage presumably hopes to shift the conversation from uncomfortable questions about racism to attacks on Starmer's competence, where he's on stronger ground given the polling and public dissatisfaction with Labour. But he risks looking like he's avoiding legitimate questions about how his party handles racist comments and allegations about his own past behavior. The Sarah Pochin comments about ethnic minorities in TV adverts are the clearest factual element in all of this. If she made comments that are reasonably interpreted as racist and Farage has taken no action, that's a legitimate leadership question. Why hasn't he addressed it? Is it because he doesn't think the comments were problematic? Is it because he's worried about alienating voters who agree with those comments? Is it because he's prioritizing party unity over moral clarity? These are fair questions regardless of what you think about allegations concerning his school days. Starmer's claim that he'd have dealt with it straight away if it were a Labour MP invites scrutiny of how Labour actually handles these situations. Has every Labour MP who's made controversial comments faced immediate consequences? Or is Starmer painting an idealized picture of his own leadership that doesn't match reality? Because if Labour has protected MPs who've made problematic things, then Starmer's attack on Farage loses force. The personal nature of the attacks, with Starmer calling Farage spineless and Farage calling Starmer the weakest prime minister in living memory, represents a deterioration in political discourse that's concerning, regardless of your political sympathies. When leaders resort to character assassination rather than policy debate, it degrades the entire political system and makes productive governance harder. So, is Keir Starmer right to call out Nigel Farage over racism allegations and his handling of Sarah Pochin's comments? Or is he making strategic mistakes by elevating Farage and basing attacks on unproven allegations? Is Farage's counterattack about Starmer's weakness effective deflection, or does it confirm he's avoiding legitimate questions about racism in his party? And does either man come out of this looking like a leader worth following? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this racism rat has divided opinions sharply. Make sure you're subscribed to UK Political Insight because political rows this personal tend to escalate and you won't want to miss our coverage of whatever comes next. Until then, remember that in politics, calling each other names might generate headlines, but rarely actually solve actual